Welcome back to the Brojo Valued Living series. Today we're going to be having a look at courage, one of the more straightforward ones. Simply put, if you want to live by the value of courage, the main thing you need to do is choose to be afraid. Now, it's not as simple as it sounds. Partly, this fear has to have a reason to serve your integrity. For example, I can go jump in front of cars on the road, but that doesn't serve my integrity even though it makes me feel afraid. I think the simplest way to talk about courage is to talk about going into the unknown in order to serve your integrity. So knowing, the thing you think you can predict, the thing you're familiar with, or the thing you feel skilled to do, that does not require courage. There's no courage required to go into the known. Where courage is required is going into a place where you know that you don't know, that you're a beginner, a novice, unskilled, unprepared, incompetent, new. So courage is about doing something new that makes you emotionally uncomfortable, a range of feelings that we'll call fear, in order to further serve your integrity, to be more honest or more compassionate or more curious. Now, fear is going to be the number one emotion that is playing in your body when you're being courageous. Only psychopaths are fearless, and if you don't feel any forms of fear, then you're not engaged in an act of courage. It's the very measurement of courage itself. But fear isn't just feeling afraid, it isn't just fight or flight response. That's what I'd call terror, or being afraid. Fear takes a lot of different forms. It can be boredom, it can be frustration, stress. For me, fear most often takes the form of stress. It can be a distraction, a procrastination of the mind away from the thing you need to be doing. It can be defensiveness or aggression, a kind of manifestation of fight or flight response. You need to really learn what fear means for you. It's the hesitancy to do something. It's the resistance to going into the unknown. And it takes so many different emotional shapes and sizes. But just understand that resistance to go into the unknown. If you feel that, then it's time for courage. Now, this is socially incomparable. And what I mean by that is just because you believe someone else is brave to do something, it doesn't mean it's an act of courage for them or for you. Let's say there's an example I use a lot, the fireman going into the burning building. You know, he races in there, fighting the flames to save the child, and you look at him and go, God, what courage, how brave is he? But if he doesn't feel fear doing that, if he's so well trained and conditioned to that situation that it's just another day at work for him, then that's not an act of courage, not for him. It would be for you if that was you running in there with no skills to save the baby. Let's take a public speaker. If the public speaker up on stage is loving it, no anxiety whatsoever, in his or her element, just thrilled to be there, that's not an act of courage. Whereas if your knees are shaking as you walk on stage to deliver that speech that would serve your honesty, that's courage. So ignore what other people are doing, because their acts of courage have nothing to do with what your acts will be. What scares them might not scare you, and vice versa. In terms of making this practical, how do we make courage practical? It's understanding that courage isn't really about willpower or force. It's about perspective. It's wisdom. Courage is understanding that the fear isn't real. And what I mean by that is, I might have my knees shaking and my throat go dry and my mind racing and my heart pulsing as I walk towards a stranger to talk to them, because my fear is telling me this is a dangerous thing to do. But it's not. Statistically, it's not. So my fear doesn't understand the truth of the situation. My fear just knows that it's unknown. And what fear does is it translates all unknown into dangerous. The way to practically apply this change of perspective is to break the thing you're doing down into its microscopic parts, what I call quantum parts. So me walking up to a stranger and having a conversation is this big overwhelming task that I'm terrified to do. right? Or maybe I was once. But taking one step towards them, that's doable. And then when I finish that step, taking another step towards them, that's also doable. And I complete this process by the time I look them in the eye. Looking them in the eye is doable. I don't have to do anything more than that one little part. I open my mouth and a sound comes out. I can handle doing that. What I can't handle is the idea or the burden of having a great conversation with a stranger when I'm unpracticed socially. Okay? So break the thing down into its tiny microscopic parts and just focus on doing one part at a time, and give yourself permission to bail out anytime you want, because every one of those steps was an act of courage. You only have to do a small act of courage to live by that value. You can bail anytime you want. So I hope that helps. Go into the unknown today. Choose one thing that would serve your integrity, that requires some courage. Do it today. And I'll see you for the next one in the series. Cheers.